I'm reading this book right now, and Chris is talking about her patriarchal blessing, and I'm like almost halfway through this book, and the stories in this book, oh man, it's like bringing up so many things. But I wanted to share with you a little piece at the end of this chapter about her patriarchal blessing that I really like identify with. And this is what she says. She said, my blessing influenced all these decisions and many other significant life choices. I was told that this blessing was a direct message from God to me alone, and I believe this to my core. In retrospect, all the duties I felt required to perform and all of the mental gymnastics I had practiced felt like Uncle Joe's cigarette entertainment. That's her uncle. She tells a story at the beginning of about little tricks that he would do with the cigarettes hanging out of his mouth and stuff. So much show, no substance. In the end, keeping the covenants and obeying the words, I'll have to flip the page, of the prophets left me feeling empty and depleted because my life's work was founded on busy work and distraction. It was a spiritual sleight of hand to keep me engaged, but not thinking and feeling for myself. And at the beginning of the chapter, she talks about her aunt having gum in her car, and all of the neighborhood kids, including herself, like if they wanted a piece of gum, they would have to kiss her aunt on the lips. And I have a couple people in my life, like that was kind of like the thing growing up, and I didn't have a problem with it because like these adults didn't hurt me. And so I had no reason to like mistrust them or anything. I think it's just kind of like an old people thing. To some extent, these adults did not hurt me and I trusted them. But anyway, but she talks about the patriarchal blessing kind of being, this tool to lure you in, saying, if you want this gum, you have to, like she says, you have to plant the kiss. You have to follow these rules. You have to make these covenants in order to see your family again, to create the things that you want. And it absolutely kind of, I don't know. I feel like it's just a toxic way of getting people to do what you want them to do, because it requires people like Chris, like me, like you, whoever, to ignore your inner compass, to ignore your inner truth and like who you are, and like actually listening to that and practice listening to that. And instead of doing that, you are practicing listening to what the leaders say, and what the leaders say is what God says, and what the patriarch says is what God is saying. And at the end of the day, Chris and I had the same experience. We were doing all the things that we were told to do, and we were doing the things, and every single time we would try to do the things to the T, accept the callings, have the babies, get married, all of that kind of stuff, serve with a willing heart and all that kind of stuff. Even though all of those, well, most of those things are good and fine, there are elements of ourselves that we were ignoring that were crucial in our development and our happiness and things like that. And those things are not prioritized in the church, and therefore they're just not important. And it's kind of like a, square peg, round hole, cookie cutter situation. I had a moment maybe a year before I left where I was considering what my life would look like if I just went all into the church and just dedicated my whole life to the church, and what that would look like. And in my brain, that looked like serving in callings for the rest of my life. I knew my personality, and I knew that I would be serving in presidencies for the rest of my life. And the things that I was already told to do in presidencies that I was in, I felt uncomfortable with. And the thought of having to do more than that, like going and visiting families who are inactive or part member families, things like that, going out into the community and proclaiming the gospel made me sick to my stomach. Because I knew deep down that although like I liked the church, I didn't love it. I liked the gospel, but I didn't love it because there were elements that didn't feel right to me. They didn't like sit well with me. And therefore I only really could go so far with what I was willing to do because a lot of it didn't feel right. It wasn't like, oh, I don't want to do that. It was like, I'm not doing that. Not doing that. That makes me uncomfortable and I don't think it's ethical. So while I was doing all the things, I was left feeling, like Chris says, empty and depleted because I was ignoring myself. And if you want to ruin your mental health and your physical health and all of the health, spiritual health, ignore yourself. Ignore your inner compass. Would not recommend that.